In this video, we're going to discuss multiplication and division of rational and irrational numbers. Let's first discuss multiplication. Multiplication of rational and irrational numbers. Let's say we have two rational numbers. Let's say we have 7 times 8. 7 times 8 is 56. It's a rational number. We have two rational numbers, we multiply them, and we get another rational number. Let's say we have two decimals. Let's say we have 0.5. We're multiplying it by 0.3. It's going to give us 0.15. 0.15 is a rational number. If you don't know how to do it in your head by putting 15 over 100, you can do it on your calculator, and the calculator will actually give you a simplified fraction of 15 over 100, which is a rational number. So multiplying two rational numbers is always going to give you a rational number. Now, when you're multiplying a rational number and an irrational number, as long as your rational number is not 0, you're going to get an irrational number. Let's say we have 7 times an irrational number. Let's say we have the irrational number of the square root of 5. We can do it on the calculator. 7 times the square root of 5 is 15.65247584. You can check, is this rational or irrational, by trying to convert it to a fraction. The calculator was not able to convert to a fraction and therefore is irrational. So that's if we have, this only occurs, we only get an irrational number. This is irrational. You only get an irrational number as long as our rational number is not equal to 0. In this case, it was 7. Because let's say we had our rational number being 0. We had 0 times, the same thing, we could do the square root of 5. 0 times the square root of 5 is 0. 0 is a rational number. So, since our rational number was 0, it made it into a rational number. So, whenever you're multiplying a rational number that's not 0 by an irrational number, you're going to get an irrational number. Whenever you're multiplying a rational number that is 0 by an irrational number, you're going to get a rational number because you're going to get 0, because 0 times anything is 0, which is a rational number. What happens when we multiply two irrational numbers by each other? Let's say we multiply, so two irrational numbers, sometimes we're going to get a rational number, sometimes we're going to get an irrational number. Let's try a scenario when we're going to get a rational number. If we multiply the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, we know already the square root of 2 is an irrational number because you can't find one number that will multiply by itself to give you the square root of 2. So the square root of 2 you can also test on your calculator. Is it rational or irrational? It's an irrational number. The square root of 2 times the square root of 2, let's do it on the calculator. Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is 2. And 2 is a rational number. So here we have a scenario of when we're going to have two irrational numbers multiplied by each other. They're going to give us a rational number. Now let's try two irrational numbers that will give us an irrational number. Let's say we try the square root of 2 times the square root of 3. The square root of 2 and the square root of 3 are two irrational numbers, and let's try it on the calculator. Square root of 2 times square root of 3, and that is 2.449489743. And what is this? Is this rational or irrational? The calculator will tell us. Try to convert it to a fraction. The calculator could not convert it to a fraction, and therefore it is irrational. So we have a scenario when we had two irrational numbers giving us a rational product, and we had a scenario when two irrational numbers give us an irrational product. So you always have to test when you're multiplying two irrational numbers by each other. You have to test on your calculator, will this give me a rational product or an irrational product? Let's move on to division. Let's clear the screen. And let's move on to division. When we have two rational numbers and we're dividing a rational number by a rational number, let's say 3 So you might know offhand that whenever you're dividing something, you can write it as a fraction. 3 over 7 is 3 divided by 7. And since this can be written as a fraction, this is indeed a rational number. This is rational. Let's say you didn't know that and you want to test it on your calculator. You can type 3 divided by 7, math, frac, enter. And it's going to give you 3 over 7, which is a rational number because it's a fraction. What you do not want to do is 3 divided by 7, enter. Now this looks very irrational. We know that it's going to be rational because we just tested it out. We can write it as a fraction. But if you would do it on your calculator, if you would go back up to it now, enter, math, and frac, the calculator thinks that it's irrational. Why? Because the calculator screen, when we divided it the first time, the calculator screen could not display the entire number. So even though it does end at some point, the screen didn't display the entire number. So the calculator thought that it was an irrational number that goes on. So the next time, the calculator thought it was an irrational number that goes on forever and ever, which it really doesn't. It really ends. So you want to do it when you did it the first time over here, when you divide 3 by 7, you divide 3 by 7 the first time, you want to put the frac on that line. You don't want to try it again afterwards. Okay, so when you're dividing two rational numbers, it's always going to be rational. When you're dividing a non-zero rational number and an irrational number, it's always going to be irrational. Let's say we have 6 divided by pi. The 6 is our rational number and it is not 0, and we're dividing it by pi. Let's see what we get. Math, frac. We're doing it on the same line just to be safe. And the calculator could not write this for us as a fraction, and therefore it is an irrational number. Irrational. If, let's say, our rational number would have been 0, we had 0 divided by pi, the irrational number, 0. When we divide 0 by anything, we're going to get 0. 0 divided by pi, 0 divided by anything is 0, and therefore it is a rational number. So when you have a non-zero number and you're dividing it by an irrational number, or you're doing the irrational number divided by the non-zero, if you're doing the irrational number divided by the non-zero rational number, it's going to be irrational. If you have 0 divided by the irrational number, you're going to get a rational number because you're going to get 0. Now, let's say you had 2 irrational numbers. If you have 2 irrational numbers, their quotient will sometimes be rational and sometimes be irrational. Let's clear the screen and check this out. Let's start with the scenario when we're going to get a rational number when we're dividing an irrational number by an irrational number, we're going to get a rational number. Let's say we have the square root of 19 divided by the square root of 19. Now, you might know offhand, when you're dividing something by itself, you're going to get 1. Let's try it on the calculator. Square root of 19 divided by the square root of 19 is 1. So, and 1 is obviously a rational number. So we have the quotient of 2 irrational numbers giving us a rational number. Now let's try a scenario when we're going to get an irrational number when we're dividing 2 irrational numbers. We're going to have the square root of 6 divided by the square root of 19 again. We can try this on the calculator. Will we have a rational number or an irrational number? Square root of 6 divided by the square root of 19. Let's see, math, frac, enter. The calculator could not convert this quotient into a fraction, and therefore it is irrational. So when you're dividing 2 irrational numbers, you have to be careful. You have to use your calculator to see, will this give me a rational number or an irrational number? Because sometimes you're going to have a rational number, sometimes it will be irrational.